meaning behind the name Gray Matter, well, first thing is I guess we just really liked the name Gray Matter. It just had a ring to it. Like, we were going over a bunch of names,
and that was the first one that we liked.
We just really liked it. And you know, Gray Matter means brains. That's like your brains. And we kind of try to attempt to put more brain power into the music, you know what I mean? Like, try to really think about it a little bit more.
Right.
So we went with Gray Matter. Plus gray, like just the idea of gray, like the color gray, and it kind of fits the mood where we're kind of like, some of the songs we do are kind of a little bit colder and dreary to a point. You know, not all of them, but some of them are. So we just like the way it kind of fit in there. So
yeah, like a gray vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vibe.
Vibe's
Exactly.
a good word.
That's a good word.
I'm pretty much from Central Florida, raised a town called Melbourne, 321 area code. Shout out to Melbourne. And then I moved to Orlando when I was about 21 years old, and I've been here ever since. And yeah, Central Florida.
Yeah. So I was born in Florida, and I've lived in Florida my whole life, except for 1 year, actually like a year and a half, where I moved to Atlanta when I was like 23. But I'm a Floridian, and there's not too many of us that have actually been born here. My family actually came from New Jersey and New York, and I'm the first generation of like born here in Florida. And so yeah, so I'm down here, influenced completely by the mix-up of all the different New Yorkers and the South, and just a big mashup of everything. See, I grew up with a single parent, just my mom, so it's just me and my brother and my mom. My mom worked a lot, so you know, when she was there, you know, when she wasn't like trying to support two kids on her own, you know, she was listening to typical 80s stuff, because you know, I grew up in the 80s, so she was listening to things like The Police and like Men at Work and like real early U2 stuff, and you know, like Cyndi Lauper and like, you know, all that 80s stuff. So she'd be playing that stuff and I would hear that, you know. But what I was listening to was like pure hip-hop, even from a really, really young age. You know what I mean? UTFO and Fat Boys and Houdini and early LL. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that's what I had. How about you?
Growing up in my house, it's kind of different because like Temp, I grew up single parent home. My mom, shout out to my mom, best mom in the world. She's from Thailand, so like she listened to a lot of like she listened to a lot of Thai music, obviously, but you know, when she would play music in the house, like all parents would when we're young as kids, a lot of Nat King Cole, Carpenters and Simon and Garfunkel and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff that my mom's into. But because my dad wasn't around, I had this big old box that I still have to this day that was all his records that he collected when he was growing up. And my father's from Detroit, so it's a lot of atypical stuff that he listened to, but it's still dope nonetheless. Like Temptations, Four Tops, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Otis Redding, Curtis Mayfield, Isaac Hayes, Ohio Players, Parliament, Herbie Hancock. Like my dad had a whole bunch of those records, and that's what I used to listen to in the house growing up mainly, which is probably what influenced me to start listening to like R&B and hip-hop at a young age as well. So because that was the music that was most relatable to me from what I was used to hearing, aside from the Carpenters and stuff.
You know, I was born in ¡75, so I'm like 35 years old right now, and I got into hip hop when it was infantile. You know what I mean? Like it was young. You know what I mean? I'm like what you would consider a veteran, because I wrote my very first rhyme when I was only 7, which was like '82. You know what I mean? And my very first memory of really getting into hip hop was when everybody, you know, in my neighborhood, we would all b-boy. You know what I mean? Like it was real early breaking, and we all would break out cardboard and we go riding our bikes around and find old, you know, refrigerator boxes and drag them home on the bike and open them up and just b-boy nonstop. So like that was hip hop, and it was all. It's kind of funny nowadays. It's all in fashion and everything, but like it was the original Pumas with the fat laces and the Adidas suits and the Kangos and big old fake gold chains, because nobody had the money to get the real ones. You know what I'm saying? So like I was basically living that, and that's like my memory. That's what that foundation, that's how I remember hip hop, like being introduced to it.
My first memory of hip hop, it's probably my sister. I have an older sister named Soytip. Shout out to you. And you remember this, but there used to be a radio station in Melbourne called, in Satellite Beach area, I guess Brevard County, called Fox 86, and they used to play hip hop all the time. And this is like 84, 85 maybe. And I was a little kid, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, and my sister and all her friends would like breakdance a lot. And I remember there was this one specific time my mom used to have this restaurant after my parents split up for a little while, and they had like a radio station event at this shopping center where my mom's restaurant was at, and my sister was outside in the front breakdancing to the music they were playing live on the air with her friends, like in red Adidas jumpsuits. And then she went and rented Breaking that night, and we sat there and watched it, and it was kind of cool. It was like, wow, what's this stuff, you know what I mean? But that was probably my first memory. I still didn't really get heavy into hip-hop because I was, like I said, still young at the time. I probably didn't get heavy in hip-hop till a couple years later, but that's definitely my first memory of hip-hop.
Word.
You know, at least from my side, I know that when I was like a little 14, 15-year-old kid and I first started rapping, I got into rapping actually a little bit late, like trying to kick rhymes and stuff or whatever. And it was initially only because I wanted to be able to jump in the ciphers that I would see with all of these older cats, and I would want to burn people up. Not battle-wise, but I would just, you know, I wanted to be able to rap well. So I started rapping with a group of my friends in high school, and when we would rap, we only ever had instrumentals to rap to. So we would be at the store all the time looking for cassettes, singles. We would come to Orlando and buy vinyl and like just try to get our hands on whatever instrumentals we could, because we didn't have anybody that made beats. Well, then when I was about 16, through a homeboy of mine, his older brother-in-law knew this cat that made beats, and that just happened to be Temperamental. And so I was a little 16-year-old kid going over to Temp's house for the first time, and here's this cat who's gonna make us beats. It was a whole surreal experience. So I met Temp back then as a 16-year-old kid. We liked the music that we were doing together, so we decided to start like kind of a group. I don't know, what do you think?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. My writing influences mainly are beats. Beats are my biggest writing influence. Obviously music in general, listening to all different types of music. I listen to a lot of like old school soul and or classic soul, a lot of old school R&B, a lot of hip hop. Temp actually puts me on to a whole bunch of stuff outside of hip hop that I'll listen to sometimes, and I'll catch inspiration from that. But really, it's just beats, what it comes down to at the end of the day, which is one of the main reasons that I enjoy working with Temp so much in a group fashion, because it's with as much work as we both do, it's almost like I feel like I'm not doing any work, because I really honestly believe like the beat damn near writes the rhyme, because he'll give me a beat and then I'll catch inspiration off that beat, and then the rhyme will just come out, you know what I mean? How would I describe my writing style?
Down to earth.
Down to earth. I guess down to earth would be a good way to put it. Very regular. Like I every time I guess, you know, quote unquote, a rapper gets asked this question, you know, like what influences you to write the way you do, or what's your writing style like, or why do you write the things that you write, and they answer in such atypical fashion, which is my same answer, which is, you know, it's life. Like, I write about my life, and but it's really down to earth, and it's really regular only because I'm a regular person, and I hope to be down to earth. I hope that's how I come across when I meet people. But you know, like, that's why my writing style or my rhymes will come out like that, and I try to make it reflect that, because at the end of the day, I'm just a regular person, I guess. You know, I have kids, I have a normal job, I have a wife, I have family life, I have friends that I go kick it with, I have music that I work on, I have you know, just regular stuff. So I can't, it's not like I can fabricate a whole bunch of stuff and then talk about it, and then actually, I could, but I wouldn't feel right about it.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not, and that's not to say anything about anybody else.
Nah.
But just me in general, like I would feel silly doing that. So I try to write really regular stuff that is kind of personal to me, or kind of just relatable to me, to tell stories or to come up with different thoughts or ideas, and then hopefully, you know, people can relate to it. And for the most part, I think some people can, because it's just, you know, I go through the same things that everybody else does. So I would say that probably regular, down to earth.
I have the same hip-hop influences that a lot of producers have. You know, you know, everybody says Premier, and I say Premier too. Premier is like one of my absolute all-time biggest influences production-wise for me, and not the up-to-date Premier either, even though, you know, he's dope, but old school, like the Step in the Arena album is my favorite production album, because the stuff that Primo was doing was crazy. You know, like he was showing me stuff that I never saw with hip-hop production, as far as, like, you know, taking the weirdest little sound and looping it and bringing it in as the intro, and then having little beat snippets in between songs. Like, that's a staple. Now I love throwing little beats in between songs, and I got all that from Primo, you know what I'm saying? Like, right before we're really going to get into making some music and I'm going to get into making beats, I'll kind of not listen to hip-hop at all. Like, I'm cleansing myself, and I'll go like 2-3 months without listening to hip-hop, which is difficult, you know what I'm saying? But I'll just listen to other genres, you know, whether it's, you know, reggae or soul or like rock or like dubstep, you know what I'm saying? I'll listen to like all this different other stuff, and that way then I'll come back and I'll dig real hard and get tons and tons of records, and I'll just start digging through, and kind of gives me like a fresh outlook. Because my whole thing is I don't want to make copies of copies, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be getting overly influenced by hip-hop, and then I'm just taking the hip-hop's influence and putting it back to hip-hop. Like, I actually want to take influences from other places, other genres, and bring it into hip-hop, so like I have something to offer, like I enhance hip-hop rather, you know what I mean? So the sound of my production, as far as describing, is kind of tough, you know what I mean, to describe your own stuff, but what I tend to shoot for, what I tend to go for, whether I achieve it or not, I'm gonna leave it up to, you know, everybody else, but I try to attempt real kind of like a dark sound, you know. I'm not really into happy-go-lucky beats necessarily that much. I enjoy them, sometimes I'll even make them, but usually I go for like this grimy, moody vibe, you know what I mean? And that's one thing that production wise is really dope about being in Gray Matter and working with illustrators. We're kind of like yin and yang, because if I didn't have Illa wanting to do certain styles, my stuff would be so grimy probably no one would listen to it, you know what I mean? It would be like mud, it'd be dirt, it'd just be grime, you know what I mean, for real. Like, and but Illa, you know, because I need to make dope beats for him to rhyme to, it brings me up to more of a normal level, and so that way, like, you can still nod your head to it, because otherwise I'd have a beat that's like 70 BPM with some pots and pans banging. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? But the stuff that Illa will write inspires me to make the kind of beats that I make on Gray Matter. So the sound, it's got that. I mean, if you listen to the album, and you should go buy that on somewhere on the internets, you know what I'm saying?
On the internets.
On the internets. But yeah, and if you listen to the album, you can kind of hear the sound. If you listen to the whole thing, it's got that vibe to it, and that's what we really strive for, is that vibe. So the sound is shaped by the songs. You know, like Illa's talking about, he's inspired by the beats, but it's vice versa too, you know what I mean? Like, the prospect of what kind of rhymes he will spit on a beat will make me construct it a different kind of way. So yeah, so the sound is dark and grimy, but yet we still try to go for the boom bap hip hop, you know.
Yeah.
I try not to be typical, but I don't want to stray too far either. So it just, you know, just depends. But anyways, that's the answer to the question.